here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's the turn of the musician, singer, songwriter and multi-instrumentalist. It's the one and only Jon Poole, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Has been in lots of bands, including the Cardiacs, the Wildhearts and Lifesigns and various other bands that you're going to find out about in this fascinating interview. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the early formative years. Jon, it's over to you.
Well, it's funny, actually, because I just caught the 60s because I was born in October 69. So I don't remember it, obviously, but I just caught it. And my earliest memory of sort of thinking, oh, what's this, was I think it was 74, so I'd have been 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old, and I saw Sparks on Top of the Pops doing This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us, and I found it equally exhilarating and terrifying. That was a proper awakening, and everything about that song, the way the piano fades in this sinister manner, and then when they hit that, this town ain't big enough for the both of us, when it's that gunshot goes off, that was the scariest thing I'd ever heard. But I loved it, and I guess shortly after, not too long after that, a couple of years or a year or something, Bohemian Rhapsody. I remember hearing that a lot. And but the first thing that I actually bought with my own money and really got into I was heavily into the more kind of funk side of the disco stuff that was going on. So 79, I became a huge Chic fan.
Yes.
And my first single was Good Times, which ended up being a bit of an influential bass line, I guess, So
Well, absolutely, yes. It was. It's quite interesting, isn't it? And I guess during that time there was people like Edwin Starr, wasn't there? And the Philly sound.
I loved Heatwave. And Earth, Wind and Fire, and what Michael Jackson and the Jacksons were doing at the time, because Michael was doing Off the Wall at the time, which I still to this day think is an amazing album, and I loved those kind of Quincy Jones productions as well. So I loved all that stuff, and to the point where I felt like. I don't know whether you call this inverted racism or something, but at the time I was so pro-black music that I thought, black people are much better at doing this than white people and stuff. And I was only 10 years old, I was daft, But it wasn't until, weirdly enough, the Police came along that Can't Stand Losing You, and I was like, oh, what's this? And I thought it was punk.
Right.
To me, that was punk. Like this kind of very Caucasian to what I was used to, stuff coming along, but I just fell in love with it. And then that sort of awakened a bit of an interest in post-punk, I guess. And then eventually I went back and did the whole Pistols Clash thing.
Yes.
All that.
I was a bit too young for punk myself, so I have to confess.
Yeah.
Even though, and also I was born.
I love things like Pill and Wire. God, there's loads of these bands. But Adam and the Ants as well, huge for me they were, and again, I started, like a lot of people did, with the Kings of the Wild Frontier stuff, but wow, when I went back to Dirt Wears White Socks and their early singles, that was a big eye opener for me,
Oh yes, absolutely. And did you have any parents or older brothers who gave you any musical direction in life?
Yeah, just a bit. I was the youngest of 6 kids, and my mum and dad, my mum is, or she's still around, a singer, and my dad was a pianist and band leader, and they used to do a lot of kind of music hall and Amtram sort of pantomime stuff and all that kind of thing. So I sort of got dragged into that a little bit. I think, to some extent we all did. But they were big jazz fans. And then, being the youngest of six, I had two older brothers that played bass. I had an older brother that played drums, who's sadly not with us anymore. And one of my sisters does play trombone. The other sister was playing the flute, and she just didn't get on with it. So she's the only, I guess you could call her a non-musician, but she's got a musical ear, and she used to buy great singles.
Yes, blimey.
She, like funny stuff like Wild Cherry. She bought the Spark stuff as well, but Wild Cherry play that funky music.
Oh, I was going to mention, yes, that classic. Yes,
Yeah.
God, that's incredible. You could have been the Osmonds there for a moment, couldn't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the background was very much sort of jazz based. Really, it was like my brothers were very into kind of jazz fusion and funk and stuff like that. They weren't in, none of them except for me got into the punk thing. That was something I found on my own, really. So that sort of cast me out a little bit, but great. I think it's good to have.
Yes. Oh, right. Did you get into people like Weather Report and
Jacko absolutely.
Pastorius?
Yeah, I still am a big fan.
And I remember in the 80s there was Stanley Clarke, but we were very excited with Stanley Clarke, weren't we?
Oh, yeah, again, I love Stanley Clarke. His 70s albums I thought were great. Particularly Journey for Love is a big one for me. But Weather Report did two albums that meant a lot to me. Heavy Weather was good, but by a slight inch, I actually prefer an album called Black Market, which I think is a fantastic album.
Yes. And did you get kind of excited with the early years or during the mid-80s? I remember being obsessed with Jon Poole. He started playing rap music and they started sampling people. I remember Grandmaster Flash did The Wheels of Steel, didn't he? And they had Good Times as a sample. Did you start picking up on that scene?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, it started with me with... now, I can't remember which order this was in. It was either Rapper's Delight, because it used the bass line from... Or in fact, the backing is Chic, Good Times. Yes. So, of course, I was going to be into that. But I also bought a single called Christmas Rapping by Curtis Blow.
Oh, my God, yes.
which also had the music was very, very much kind of a nod to that track. And it got me really into. And I remember the B-side of Christmas Rapping was called "Do It Yourself Rapping," so I recorded myself. I learned the rap and then recorded myself doing that. Which is hilarious. And my brother Ed picked up on it. He's a bass player, and he picked up on it, and I think he recorded me doing it. I wonder if that tape still exists.
Yeah,
but anyway,
on a trusty TDK D90.
Oh, it would have been. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he recorded it on a Ghetto Blaster as well. So it was, but no. And then when electro came along, in fact, I really liked Malcolm McLaren's single, the Buffalo Gals thing.
Yes,
where he took kind of different cultures and mixed them together. I loved all that because I liked. When that was what was great about Adam and the Ants, the way the fusion of different styles, where they could be as bold as to take the Burundi beat and mix it with I don't know, a John Barry or Ennio Morricone soundtrack, and I love that, and I think that Malcolm did that with Buffalo Gals. It's basically it's like electro hoedown, isn't it? Sort of, it's.
Yes, well, I think they had sort of Marco Perrone there as well. So by their second or third albums, which had most of the hits on, they brought in that kind of Roxy music, Bowie, glam. With that kind.
Amazing.
Yes.
I think a lot. I never understand it when people say, "Oh yeah, but they sold out and went all pop." I'm sorry, but I fail to see how mixing the Burundi beat, Roxy music, Bowie. And Ennio Morricone, John Barry. I fail to see what's commercial about that. They lucked out, and somehow it caught on.
Yes.
But there's nothing remotely commercial about the music they come up with. It is mental. Even the Prince Charming album is mental.
Yes, and actually, I quite like the Bow Wow Wow because they had some quite good rhythms as well.
Yeah, absolutely love Bow Wow Wow. They were, again, they were huge. They were really huge for me. Bless old Matthew Ashman as well. He was great, and of course Dave Barb's drumming and Lee Gorman.
Yes.
He was amazing because he was really into Stanley Clarke, so he could do all that slap stuff, but he had this really fast picked technique that I quizzed him about. I met him once, and I quizzed him about it, and he said, look, I know this sounds a bit crap, but it's a bit like the what do they call that? The martial art tremble thing. I can't remember what it's called, but he said it's basically you sort of get your hand to kind of move very easily and with no tension, I think.
Right. Did you then also get into people like Mark King and Level 42? Did that sort of?
Yeah, because my brother was he was at one point he was the only white man in town who played slap bass.
Right.
And then along comes Mark King, and it's like, oh, there's another one about. And Level 42 ended up getting my brother's band to support them. And my brother's band were, again, a kind of Brit funk, jazz funk sort of band from that time. And my brother was and is an amazing bass player. And so I was immediately introduced to Love Games, I think was the first one I heard, and those albums as well. And I was really into them.
Yeah.
And I was massively into all of the New Romantic thing as well. So I loved Japan were my big thing, although they were sort of pre-New Romantic really. But I liked all that stuff.
Guess if you like the bass, Mick Karn's bass line would have been, quite a interesting thing to follow.
It was everything. It was the first time I knowingly heard a fretless bass. I wasn't sure what it was when I heard it. It was like, is this a trombone or something, And it was Quiet Life was the single I heard.
Yes.
It was the bass that dragged me in initially. And then I realised what a strange band they were, because nothing about the way that any of them play was orthodox, and it's not learned. It comes from instinct, and it's really they're not obsessed. They're not preoccupied with technique or anything boring like that. And I never was really, but much to my detriment. But I really value how ideas sometimes outweigh technical ability. There are some great musicians out there that are very technical, but there are also some amazing people. People like Joy Division. I love that band, and they just sort of went to see the Pistols at that gig in Manchester, and then they just plugged a few instruments in and sort of did stuff to the best of their ability and came out with interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
ESG.
I think a few years later, then we had people like Trouble Funk. You would have probably, did you sort of come into that go-go scene if you were still listening to
No, I was aware of it. Yeah, and I definitely remember that band. There was there was something else that fitted into that. The name escapes me, but I remember watching the video at the time, and it was the first time I'd heard the expression go-go. This was I didn't latch onto it till about 85. I don't know if it was around early.
Yeah, I think there was another guy called Chuck Brown or something, actually, in that scene. There was the NME who used to do really good cassettes, but they also did a couple of vinyl albums, and they did a go-go compilation, which I sort of went and happily bought, because it was always kind of, like you mentioned Street Sounds, those Morgan Khan compilations that came out.
Oh, yeah.
And they were very handy because they basically picked the best song that those bands had recorded and put it on.
I can't remember which number it was, but a friend of mine lent me one of the Electro albums. So it was 1, 2, or 3. I can't remember when, but it was 83, and it was the first time because I think I'd already heard The Message,
right?
But it was the first time I ever heard White Lines.
Right.
And it was like, straight away, I was like, that fucking bass line, it was just so good, and I didn't know that they had taken that from a band called Liquid Liquid.
Oh, that's right. Yes, from New York. Yes.
Yeah, well, there was a mutant funk scene in New York, and again, there's a band called ESG that I absolutely love. That were very much part of that. Do you know that band?
Yes, I do, because they were all on this particular label, which I've interviewed the guy who did it, called, is it OZ Records, SE Records, or something like that?
That rings a bell. That rings a bell, yeah.
And so there was a whole load. There was... God, there's a woman who did a brilliant version of Fire. Because the New York kind of post-punk scene was kind of like that James Chance and Lydia Lunch and various kind of... It had a bit of a jazz fusion, Latin American vibe within a kind of very kind of staccato guitar, sometimes quite funky and sharp.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, one thing that really interested me about ESG was the fact that they were brought up on the projects in the South Bronx, these girls, and I think they got in Tito, who was their cousin, the bloke on percussion. So that was your token male member, and they just did this. I think their parents bought them instruments so that they wouldn't go out getting into drugs or going on the game or whatever, and so they locked themselves away and sort of learnt their own primitive version of funk, which I think became known as mutant funk.
Yes.
As part of a scene. Simon Reynolds writes about it in his brilliant book Rip It Up and Start Again, which is all about the post-punk scene. But what was interesting about them is how they ended up coming over to England to record with Martin Hannett.
Oh, blimey.
So it's got the sound of it has got that kind of post-punk sort of Joy Division Pill sort of sound, but it's these girls getting down with their bad self.
My God, it's quite interesting because most people during that kind of 80s period who recorded with Martin often mention, well, to be honest, Martin didn't do a lot, but the engineer had to take over because he was normally laying on the floor somewhere, sort of recovering. So I don't. Yeah. So they probably did quite well if he was really with it, because he sounded like he was losing it.
The funny thing with all of that is that there is still a Martin Hannett sound. So yes. I wonder how much of it, maybe that's part of his technique, is to be as unreliable or perhaps, in the same way that what's his name, used to pull a gun out.
Yes, Phil Spector.
Phil Spector, yes. Sorry, I can never remember that man's name, and he's like the most famous producer in the world. Yes. Wall of Sound.
But if you met him in the corridor, you'd be freaked out. Well, I'm not sure. I think he's passed away now, hasn't he? So
I believe so. Yeah.
Who knows? But yes, they were unbalanced times, but great music.
One thing that made me laugh actually was there's a band. Do you remember the band Wall of Voodoo?
Oh my God, I love them.
So do I. Particularly their first album, Dark Continent.
Is that got 1, 2, 3 Cool Box and?
Oh God, yeah. That's the video for that's amazing as well. But no,
Mexican Radio. That's it. Sorry.
That's it. Yeah. That's off the second album, Call of the West.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tim Smith was a big fan of that album, or both those albums. But I remember reading once that. Phil Spector, sorry, they were recording, quite early on when they were first getting stuff together, because I think their aim was to do film music. It wasn't to be a band.
Yeah.
And Stan Ridgway sat there at the desk, and one of the roadies or their mate or something said, this is the way you're piling this stuff on. It's a bit like the Phil Spector Wall of Sound, and then he just went more like a wall of voodoo. And that's where the name came from.
Right.
Because it's such a great name, Wall of Voodoo.
Oh, God, absolutely. Yeah, no, there are just so many amazing bands. I think
they're an IRS band as well, with Miles Copeland.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Miles had signed them, and yeah. They were good, but I don't think they ever... Yeah, they did. Stan's still doing bits and pieces, actually, if you look him up. He's still about, and various other members of that band.
I bought the album that he did that had Camouflage on it, and I loved it because I loved the single that he did with Stuart Copeland that was for the Rumblefish film, Don't Box Me In.
Oh my God, Francis Ford Coppola.
That's it. Yeah, I love that film as well. It's got great. You get Tom Waits in there as well. Yeah.
Yes, well, that was Rumblefish and Outsider were those two films with Matt Dillon, weren't they? And Mr. Rooney is his brother, and I just remember that it was all moody and they were looking at goldfish symbolising their own trapped lives. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that was lovely, that wasn't it? And it was all in this lovely, gorgeous black and white, really vibrant looking. But the only thing that was in colour were the fish.
The fish.
And then the moment where there's a shooting and it all just flashes into colour for a second, you know.
Oh,
notice how I didn't let on who got shot there for.
It's a spoiler alert. I can remember bits because I was a little bit captivated with that whole vibe and scene. And then there was those other films, Jim Jarmusch movies, which might have been a bit later, Down by Law and Stranger Than Paradise, that featured.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That featured, I think, various. It could have been Tom Waits in those as well, actually. And John Lurie, who was a jazz saxophonist in New York that we all loved, even though it was really hard work to listen to. But I think it was something like the Jazz Lizards or something. I don't know. They were.
Oh yeah, that rings a bell.
It might all.
David Lynch was very big, but in Cardiac's world, David Lynch was huge. You know.
Oh yes, well you had Eraserhead, didn't we? And
the grandmother was a huge influence. Cardiac's, when I joined them, we did one of the first things I did with them was we went and shot a video, and I remember I had really bad flu, and we did it on a Super 8 camera in the rain in some park in Kingston or Surbiton or something, and I just remember that we were all crawling around on the floor barking. And then Tim told me that he said, "Oh yeah, I sort of got the idea off The Grandmother, which is a David Lynch student film, I believe." And when I eventually saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, it's exactly the same," because he also put the blue tint on the on it, which really gave it that vibe sort of thing. But yeah, so I'm skipping ahead here because I was going to say that in the mid-'80s, around 85, and this is the funny thing, Marco Peroni once said, you can split the 80s into two halves, pre-Live Aid and post-Live Aid. And post-Live Aid, it was all over, which I thought, yeah, fair comment, because there were some pretty interesting singles in the charts in the first part of it. You had things like Laurie Anderson, No Superman, or Ghosts by Jabang in the top 5, interesting stuff. But it definitely, as it got to the mid to the late 80s, it became littered with Johnny H. Jazz and fucking Curiosity Killed the Cat and all that nonsense. And that was when initially the first thing I did, rather than go indie or alternative, I discovered Frank Zappa.
Right.
That was life-changing. I was over at my sister and brother-in-law's house, then brother-in-law, and they played me they had on Betamax a cassette from 1980, a Betamax cassette from 1980. It was 1981 Halloween gig. So the band was, Steve Vai was in the band. It was that era.
Right.
And I had never heard music like it. I didn't know really that it was possible to play stuff like that. To me, I thought, well, it sounds improvised, but it can't be because they're all playing it in unison. And then I twigged, oh God, this stuff's been written. And they've got these superhuman musicians to play it. And the thing I noticed about it wasn't kind of wanky. It wasn't like muso-y, it wasn't just there as a show off to each other and their mates, as one person once said. But it was more for it was more for effect for the actual stuff.
Yeah,
and I was transfixed with it, and it led to me then going back, I guess, checking out bands that I'd missed from the early 70s because I was a bit too young. So that's when I got into bands like early Genesis and Yes, UK, Gentle Giant. There's a whole list of these bands.
Right. So basically, you went straight into prog.
I did. Yeah. But I am painfully aware.
Did you get into Chris Squire then?
Yeah, I did. I initially, really. Although. Because when a lot of the bass work I do, people have commented, "Oh, you must be a bit of a Chris Squire fan," but I think the majority of my gritty full-on aggressive sort of sound probably comes a little bit more from JJ Burnell than it does Chris Squire.
Right.
But then there's all other stuff chucked in. There's so many melodic sensibilities that I got from people like Colin Moulding out of XTC, who are one of my favourite bands, but well, if not my favourite band, but I love XTC. But yeah, Colin Moulding, and I guess all of the people we mentioned, Jaco Pastorius, Mark King, but sorry, Mick Karn, but if you imagine those things played with a sort of JJ Burnell attitude, I think that's pretty much.
Yes. So when you got to, so by 75, 76, Live Aid, was that, you were 16,
85.
did you? 80. What did I say? 65?
70.
75, yeah. 85, okay, 80, 85, 85, 86, you were 16, you were leaving school at that stage. Did you continue on at school, or did you?
No, well, weirdly enough, I was, because things got a bit messed up. When I was 13, my family fell into really bad debt. We were living in Hemel Hempstead, which is where I was born. And we knew we were going to have to move away in order to cover our debts. We ended up in glorious Milton Keynes, and sorry, what was the question?
Oh, yeah, so 85, not 75. You would have been 16 leaving school, but you said you'd moved from Hemel Hempstead to Milton Keynes.
Because I was born at the end of the 60s, majority of 85, I was 15. I planned to leave school when I was 16, but I started this new school in Milton Keynes, and I had a very encouraging, although I didn't take music as a subject, I had a very encouraging music teacher. There was a very encouraging music teacher there called Neil Davidson. Absolutely lovely bloke. And weirdly enough, he showed up at one of my gigs about a year or two ago. And it was so amazing to see him. It's a lovely, lovely guy. And he was very encouraging, got me playing in kind of school bands, going out representing the school, doing entering competitions and stuff. And at the time, you have to bear in mind, I had this back combed hair and a mullet, so we were playing, I guess, the sort of pop music of that era.
Did you look like John Taylor from Duran Duran?
I wanted to look like Nick Rhodes.
Nick Rhodes.
That's what I was going for. I like Nick Rhodes because he was a David Sylvian fan, and I was a huge David Sylvian fan, huge fan. So yeah, I was all like blusher and lip gloss and blue eyeliner and blue mascara and eyeliner and all that stuff. I was well into all that.
Nice.
And I wore some horrible clothes, like tiny little white shoes with pink socks and flecky suits with. I had a shirt that was kind of like satin. It was blue satin. Really, wow. And it's all real garish sort of stuff with a leather yellow, light yellow tie. Nice. I just look like I don't know, like a reject from Breakfast Club or something like that.
Yes, well, or sort of, rummaged through David Bowie's 1983 wardrobe, I suppose, and Serious Moonlight tour.
Completely.
Ah, that's it.
I suppose same dancing as well.
Yeah, I suppose you would have looked a little bit on that, not yuppie, but that kind of that post-new romantic kind of.
There was a touch of that.
Oh, I suppose there would have been the yacht rock world, wasn't there, with the sort of pulled up sort of jacket sleeves and bits. And
God, yeah, all of that. Although it wasn't, I don't think it was called. It wasn't yacht rock kind of coined in the last 15 years.
That is also very true. I think they have just coined that. And bizarrely, though, you mentioned Michael Jackson because the members of Toto appear quite a lot on his album Thriller, and they write quite a couple of the songs. So it's quite interesting that they got sort of hoisted in there. So a bit of yacht rock does appear in.
God, yeah. No, I liked a couple of their singles. I really loved Steely Dan, still do. Thought they were great. Rod Temperton out of Heatwave, Cleethorpes' finest. He wrote a lot of stuff for Michael Jackson. Oh, Gary Newman. I'm a huge Gary Newman fan.
Yes, well,
Unashamed.
yeah, no, absolutely. He's yes, he's come back in favour, which is good. He had
Yeah,
he
that's
had a
right.
tricky period, didn't he? Really, but
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
that's the
he
'80s
did.
for you. It
I
wasn't.
stuck with him. I stuck with him though. Yeah, but I love those Tube My Army albums. Those first couple of ones. It's great.
Yes, his Mad Max image was quite a hard one to kind of ignore, wasn't it? Really.
Everyone hates that album, Warriors. I like it.
Yeah,
And
well, it's good.
I like the one before it, I Assassin, the one with Pino Palladino on it. Yeah. And Chris Slade out of AC/DC played drums on it as well.
Oh, nice. So look, so you stayed at school then for A levels.
Oh, well, no. What it was is that that's what I was going to say is that I wasn't because of the upheaval. There was an upheaval in my family where we had to get out of where we were living. But for about 5 months, I went and lived with my sister and her then husband in Holland. And I actually think this was a major part in my how I changed, how I completely altered,
Yes,
and how I learned so much. I discovered Zappa out there and started listening through their record collection. They had things like Trout Mask Replica as well, and some jazz stuff as well, and also pre moving out there, I had this accent that sounded like Phil Daniels. I've got a recording of me arguing with my brother where I'm like, "You just come down here doing nothing, just try to slow me down," like that. That's how I used to talk. When I went to Holland, I had to slow all that down so people would understand me.
right.
But it meant I had this great musical education, and I would sit and chat to my sister and my then brother-in-law, and I'd learn a lot of great little bits, and by the time I got back to school, I mean, my schooling was messed up. Oh, that's right. And also, before I left Hemel, my dad had a stroke as well, and that had sent me but I'd gone off the rails a little bit at school, stopped giving a shit, and so I sort of, my schooling suffered, but it was strange because I used to have posh girlfriends,
Right.
that were very intelligent, and they would always just say to me, "Look, just because you're just because you're not academic doesn't mean that you're not intelligent." So I had a lot of support in that way. So I was able to kind of communicate reasonably reasonably eloquently. It's all right. And I think my schooling suffered, but this great teacher, Neil Davidson, the music teacher, said, "Look, you need to stay on for the sixth form because we're getting in a load of 4-track equipment. So a 4-track recorder. I think they got a DX21 and a sequencer and a RX21 drum machine, and basically he found a loophole in which I could stay on and do this weird course that was about preparing you for leaving school, and I just spent all of my time in this studio and learning how to use it, and then occasionally teaching some of the younger kids how to use it as well. So so I stayed on for 1 year of the sixth form. So I was 17 when I left school.
Right.
So I did the sixth form, but I wasn't academic at all.
No, but then. So did you? So your first band, was that Ad Nauseam?
I don't know if that was my first band. I'm trying to think. No, okay. The first band I did a gig with was when I was still in Hemel. I was 13 years old, and they were 15. The rest of the band. Good friend of mine who I'm still in touch with now, called Paul Crisp. We had a mod band called Tube Station.
Right.
My first gig was with them at his school, which they'd hired out for the evening, and then we went. It's like we did a gig and then we went home with a couple of girls, which was I thought
was yes. Well, in those,
this is how it works. It's all very innocent.
This is what Lemmy had the same thing. He suddenly saw someone with a guitar being followed by random young women and went, I'm going to walk into school the next day with a guitar as well, and then thought that's it.
These girls were Duran Duran fans, and at the time, the rest of the band were mods. Although I stuck out like a sore thumb because I had a wedge, and I still looked very much part of that neoromantic thing that went before, sort of thing. So,
and could you play Rio?
Yes, but I was playing predominantly guitar then, because this is the thing. I started playing guitar when I was 11, started playing drums when I was 13, which is the same year that I did that gig. And then when I was 15, I started playing bass, but it was fretless bass because I had Mick Karn. And then by the time I was about 16, 17, I was playing. I started dabbling in keyboards from the age of 14. So, and to be quite honest, I didn't want to play live. I wanted to be a recording artist like David Eastaugh.
Yes.
And I wanted to never have to play live, to just sit there and record stuff on my own, playing everything myself.
A bit like Prince meets Brian Wilson.
Yeah, well, that's really kind. I'm so glad you didn't say, what's his name, Cheever the Bells bloke, Michael.
Oh God, yeah. This is true, actually. Yeah. Oh.
No, that's very, very kind of lovely of you. Very kind.
So so you were getting to know the studio though, weren't you? Which is kind of an important thing to do.
In a very small way, and to this day, as things have progressed, I have a very, very limited kind of knowledge of a program called Logic,
right, which
I was kind of dragged into kind of doing, really terrified, but kindly kind of given to me by a guy called Willie Dowling, and he was just like, you've got to learn this. So I've got a limited knowledge of it. I can record bass for people now, so I can do sessions. I can record bass and vocals and any kind of live instruments. Really, I still haven't quite got my head around the MIDI stuff.
Yes,
but that'll come. I want to learn it. I do want to learn it, but I need time to learn it.
You also need someone who can just push a button when you get a bit stuck, so you don't sit there for ages.
Yeah, an engineer would be perfect. but certainly when it was tape and stuff, and then going on into the mid-90s, I was very much around recording gear and stuff, and so I think I progressed onto 8-track. And then I produced an album for a band called Sidi Boussaï, that were this great all-girl band. They sort of got lumped in with the Riot Girl scene, but they were a bit more. There was a bit more to them than that. And their first album had been produced by a guy called Tim Free Screen, that was out of the band.
Yes.
And Tim Smith out of Cardiacs actually produced one of their albums.
What's the band called again?
Sidi Boussaï.
Oh, blimey.
They're really good. They were great. I liked them as soon as I heard them. They were a lot more rough and ready in the early days, and Tim Free Screen's production was very much trying to capture the rawness of them, and it ended up sounding like a very expensive demo.
Yes.
But Tim did this album with them called Bodies that sounded great. And then I did one called Obsessive after it. And again, at the time I was working, I got an engineer in, a guy called Roger Tebbett, that had worked on some of the 80s Cardiac stuff. And so he helped me with all the stuff I didn't know, but I had a reasonable understanding of how it worked. I knew how to EQ stuff and make it sound nice, and I was more on the arrangement side. And he very kindly said to me, "Well, you're more of a Trevor Horn type," and I was like, "Oh, really?" But no, I'm not. God, that guy was a genius. He's a genius.
Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting though, because that 80s production, some of it I find dated really badly. That slightly, I even find talk a bit like, oh God, I wish they hadn't. Yeah, but that's I just find it a little bit.
there's that Colour of Spring album. I actually really like the sound of that because it sounds a little bit more. Oh God, what's the word? Like, you know, like it sounds. It doesn't sound completely artificial, like their earlier stuff does. You know. I mean, something like Life's What You Make It, I think it sounds great. And I did really like the whole kind of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Grace Jones.
Oh yes, the ZTT records.
Yeah, I loved all that. I thought it sounded great. But at the same time, I hated things with like Linn drums. There's a drum machine called a Linn drum. And when the snare is put through that gated reverb sound, and you get that, I'm so excited. That thing. Simmons pads, I can be doing that. With DX7s, I can be doing it without, you know. But I really loved the first part of the 80s when it was still a bit of a hangover from what had gone before. So things like Moogs or Moog, as it is pronounced, and Oberheim's, and there was another one as well, Prophet 5, I think it was. All the stuff Japan used was great. Richard Barbieri, to this day, the sounds that him and David Sylvian got on the Tin Drum Japan album, I don't think have ever been bettered. To this day, they still sound just incredible to me.
And have you worked in quite a lot of different recording studios as well? Are there any particular recording studios that you have fondness for?
Yeah, the one that I have real fondness for is the one that I worked in with Sidi Boussaï, and then I worked in there again with Ginger Wildheart, because I play sometimes a band.
Yes.
Well, I'm currently now back in a band called the Wildhearts, and he had a band. The first thing I did with him, actually, a band called Silver Ginger 5. We went to record at a place called Blackwing. Now, when I first went there, I met this lovely middle-aged, well, at the time he seemed to me to be middle-aged man called Eric Radcliffe. And he was lovely, really, really nice bloke. And as I got chatting to him, it became clear that he was. Do you remember Yazoo did an album called Upstairs at Eric's?
Yes.
Well, that was recorded in Blackwing, and he was the Eric in question, and he was a producer as well. And he worked in a band called The Assembly with Vince Clarke and Fergal Sharkey.
Yes.
And the reason that album was called Upstairs at Eric's is because I think there was a downstairs to Blackwing studio, and when I say downstairs, it was literally about 3-4 steps or something. And they moved from downstairs to the upstairs part of the building, and it was a converted church, and so that became known as Upstairs at Eric's. And I think Depeche Mode recorded there as well.
Oh, amazing! Well, yeah,
Blackwing, and then I looked down the list, and people like. Of people that played there, and it was people like Pixies recorded there. Who else? Elastica, I think, was another band.
Amazing.
Loads of people. It was a huge place in the 90s, and I have a real fondness for that studio because I recorded there about 3 or 4 times. In fact, I remember we did a thing called the Singles Club, me and Ginger Wildheart's thing, but I was involved in. And we did this song it sounded like Zig Zig Sputnik, and we got Neil X in.
Oh, brilliant, Yes, he's Eddie Cochran, really, isn't he?
That's it, yeah. But through echoes and manipulating these echoes, and making them sound very much like that. But what made me laugh was he turned up, and he was clean. He wasn't doing any drugs or anything like that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but sorry?
I said yes, and I was going to say, and you guys weren't so clean?
No, we weren't. He brought over the entertainment for us that night, but he wasn't partaking. Let's just put it that way. And so he did this great guitar stuff that sounded exactly like Zig Zig Sputnik. And it was lovely. He left with it, and he had a minder with him or something. And they both left, walked out with his guitar, and it was like, oh, great. So we proceeded then to get high, and then at one point I looked over and I went, "What's Neil X's guitar doing over there?" And he'd left it on the stand and walked out with holding a case that had no guitar in it.
My God.
You would have known. You would have known that there was no guitar in it, because it would have been really light.
Yeah.
And that was him straight. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was most.
My God.
I don't know. Maybe my memory of it is that I find it more funny than it is, because I find it funny in the way that I found it funny at the time, because I was
well, yes. Well, it's a very strange thing to walk out just with the case and not the guitar.
Yeah, an empty case, light as you like, and it's just wandered up. But it was how long it took us to actually notice that there was this bloody beautiful white Gretsch guitar that he had. And it was the iconic guitar that he used with that band as well. And I was just like, how did anyone miss that for the last 4 hours?
So did he have a slightly, not embarrassed, but a phone call later saying, not by any chance, did I leave it something?
That must have happened.
That must have happened, mustn't it? That kind of, did I leave my coat with you? No, just a very expensive guitar in the corner. So dear old Neil X. Anyway, he's rocking.
He's great, yeah.
He's a nice guy. So how do you then navigate the late 80s and into the 90s at this stage? I mean, musically, things are all changing, because suddenly ecstasy comes along, and the dance scenes happening, the Hacienda, Primal Scream, Happy Mondays, Stone Roses, and then you had grunge coming in. How do you navigate this kind of musical shift?
Well, it was a funny time. It's only in hindsight that I really appreciate Happy Mondays. I think they were brilliant, that band. And I just didn't get them at the time. But I do remember in '87, I was so fed up with chart music, and I met a bloke called Andy Allen that I'd actually been at school with. He knew me, but I didn't know him, and he'd already left. And this was right just before I left school. And this bloke is an angel. He's the life changer of everything that ever happened. So I was over in this bedroom with another friend of ours, and we were sat there listening to music, and he went, "Here, have a look at this," and showed me this record, and it was the Big Ship EP by Cardiacs. And I took one look at what they looked like on the front, with all this kind of weird smudged makeup and stuff. And I found it disgusting. I was appalled by it. And I thought, oh, look at them. And Sarah, particularly the sax player, looked horrible. And they're all doing these kind of weird faces and stuff. And I didn't know what to make of it. I was appalled by it. He went, well, check this out. And the first thing he did was he put on side 2, first track, and it was Tarred and Feathered was the song. And the minute it started, I was like, oh my God, somebody's actually doing this in the 80s. And to me, my initial thing was I had little bits of Gentle Giant and Frank Zappa in it, which now I haven't got used to the stuff. I realise there's something other about it. But
yes,
initially I'd never heard, I'd only previously heard music that complex from the likes of Zappa and Gentle Giant. And so I was really, really like, wow. And then he went, oh, well, they were on the Tube, and the British music show, TV show. So we went downstairs, and we were sat there watching the video to this song. And I was like, this is just incredible. How are these people doing this? And it just changed everything. That moment. It really, really. It's that seed. The seed that was sown then was so strong, because he said, "I've got a friend called Bob Leaf. I think you should meet him and you should work together." Bob Leaf became the drummer in Cardiacs later on, and even things like, I don't know. There's so many of these things.
Yes.
To go into a lot of them, but yeah, that was a life-changing moment. And he played me Stump at the same time.
My God, Stump! We love Stump.
Yeah, well, another amazing bass player, Kev Hopper. a fellow, because I got a Wall fretless, which is the same bass that Mick Cullen uses. He's a fellow Wall player, but I thought he was incredible. And what I liked about that band was that he was this incredible bass player, but they had this sound that was almost Beefheart-esque, and I loved the strange yanking on the strings that the guitarist used to do with quite a clean sound, and using the whammy bar and this odd singer. And I thought they had a great sound, that band. So I discovered Cardiacs and Stump on the same day.
Blimey, that is a good double bill, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Charlton Heston, Put Your Vest On.
Yeah.
That was such a classic. Tupperware Stripper as well was another classic, wasn't it?
That was on that EP that my mate had. Yeah.
Bogshed, yes. There was Big Flame, Bogshed, A Witness. Can't remember. There was a few bands that Jon Poole really was, he introduced us to. So
there's a friend of mine, Rodri Marsden, who he's done some great stuff. He went on to play keyboards with a band that we both loved when we were younger, Scritti Politti. So he played with them, but he was into bands like Stump and Bogshed. I can't remember the point of what I was saying now, but it's gone. What were we saying?
I was just saying that there was that period in the 80s. I remember Jon Poole picking up on a whole load of these bands like Stump, Bogshed, A Witness, Big Flame, sort of very sort of slightly scratchy, and obviously the Captain Beefheart thing, and just kind of musically. I think people were, at that point, there was a lot of people who were unemployed or just claiming job seekers allowance, enterprise allowance schemes, and were just being subsidised on that, and then could just kind of form a band and, get played on the Jon Poole show and get a session on this, Maid of Val, and it kind of kept the 80s rolling, because we all thought it was all going to end terribly with a nuclear war or Chernobyl or something. So there wasn't a career kind of like, yes, we must do it. And during that time,
we all watched the Two Tribes video, didn't we?
We did, yes. And then there was all those grim things like I don't know, God, there was that cartoon book. Was it Raymond? Somebody did one about When the Wind Blows or something.
Oh God, that was grim. Do you know what? I've made a point of never seeing that, because apparently it is just completely upsetting and devastating.
Yes, it's
it freaked my brother out. I remember my brother Rich. He got so freaked out by it, and I vowed I'm never going to watch this, because it's gonna mess with me for the rest of my life. Raymond Briggs, wasn't it?
Raymond Briggs, yes. Yeah,
he did all the lovely stuff like the Snowman and Father Christmas.
Oh yes, Father Christmas, yeah.
And he drops that on us.
I think Fungus the Bogeyman. Yeah. But yes, When the Wind Blows. So how do you then enter into the world of the Cardiacs, apart from hearing them with your mate in '87?
Well, this is the thing. He then introduced me to Bob Leaf, and we became like inseparable for a long time, and we formed a band called Ad Nauseam. And initially, I can't remember the stuff we were doing. It was kind of creative pop, I guess you would call it. I don't know. It's very hard to explain what we were doing, but it was influenced by what we were listening to at the time. So there have been bits of David Sylvian and Level 42, but also he got me into Genesis in UK, two bands, and Gentle Giant.
Yeah.
So we were taking influences from them as well. And then it transpired that we both we were both on the verge of getting into Cardiacs, or in the process of getting into Cardiacs. And then we started going to see them, and that was another life changer. I remember taking 2 weeks off work, and Cardiacs became the only band I ever followed. Like physically went round. Bob's girlfriend was driving, and she drove me and him around everywhere. And I think in those 2 weeks, I went to see him about 4 or 5 times or something.
Blimey, that is dedicated fandom.
Yeah, no, we were obsessed with them. And what happened was, I think we'd already seen them twice at the end of '88, And then the first gig we went to in '89 was at Warwick University. We walked in, we turned up there in the afternoon, and we met Mark Walmsley outside. He said, "Do you want to come in and watch the sound check?" We were like, "What? Really? We're allowed to do that?" And we thought Cardiacs were these huge, famous stars that you would never meet, you know.
Yes.
We walked in, and there they are, just walking around, setting up, and there was this a very effeminate person that we actually thought was Bill Drake's girlfriend, and it was Big. It was really weird, and we didn't know Sarah had left, you know, and then he got up and started sound checking Big Ship with them, and I was just like, oh, well, he must be like a roadie or something that's testing out Tim's other guitar. Sarah will be along in a minute. And then we were starting to think. And then at one point, I think I said to Bob, God, imagine if that was Sarah's replacement. And he went, actually. And then eventually he went over to Mark Walmsley. Bob went over to Mark Walmsley and said, where's Sarah? And he was like, she's left. And I remember my heart sunk because we, you know, big Sarah fans.
Yeah.
Anyway, that night we watched the gig and we just fell in love with Big. We thought it was amazing, you know. He just added this whole new vibe to it and really fitted in and was just perfect. And I've, you know, since that day I've had this healthy kind of respect for Big, you know, and I loved all the kind of Levitation and Darkstar stuff that he did. And he comes into music from a very instinctive way, again, rather than you know, it's not studied at all, sort of thing. But he has really good feel, really great timing. He plays great, and he is a master of sound and noise and stuff. And I've always kind of admired him. And so from that day, that was when I first started loving Big, you know, and they were great, and they were really, really good, and we continued to follow in this summer of '89, which was the summer of love, it was known as.
Yes, absolutely. But yes, normally in a field taking ecstasy.
Well,
but,
yeah.
But it's a similar thing, isn't it? So then how do you then become part of this band? This is an exciting thing, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing. That gig, we met Dominic Blackman walking around, and we couldn't believe it. So we got chatting with him, and it turned out we're into all the same music as he was. And he was I think he was more used to fans coming along that weren't really into that stuff that they liked. But we were ticking all the same boxes. And so the next time we went along, I said to Bob, I said, why don't we give Dom a tape of what we're doing? And at the time, I think we had about 4 songs, plus a cover version of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, the track, and a cover version of To Go Off and Things, a Cardiac track. And so I said, look, let's just take a cassette with us, stick your number on it and your address, and we'll just hand it to Dom if we're lucky enough to meet him again. And so this was at the Astoria '89. We walked in there. Boys Wander was supporting. I remember that. And they did Live and Let Die, which Bob got really excited about because he's a huge John Barry, James Bond fan.
Yes.
And we handed this, and there was Dom. It was like, oh, fucking brilliant. So we handed this cassette to him, and we didn't want to bother him, so we shook his hand and went off. We were always like that. If we saw him in a pub, we wouldn't talk to them until they approached us. You know, we were always very, very respectful
Yes.
and didn't want to bother them. But in this case, I really felt we should give him a tape. And so we gave him this cassette, and about 3 days later, he rang the number. He rang Bob, basically. And I couldn't believe it because Bob rang me up and got me out of bed and said, "You're never going to believe this." And I was still living with my parents at the time, and he said, and I was 19. He said, "You're never going to believe this, but Dom's just phoned me out and loves the tape." And he says, I've given him your number and he's going to call you in a minute as well. So I was like, what? You know, they were our heroes, you know, and we not only did we get to meet them, but then all of a sudden the drummer's ringing us up telling us he loves our music. And I couldn't believe it. I thought I'd arrived, you know, I thought it will never get better than this moment, you know. And then the tape got passed around and we became sort of friends with the band. But again, I was still completely in awe and starstruck. And we got invited to the end of tour party at the Syndrome, a club on Tottenham Court Road, Oxford Circus, and the Blur and all that lot of music. They'd always go up to Tim and say how much they loved him and stuff. But they, so all of a sudden, we're being invited to stuff. We're chatting to them, but again, still trying to keep a healthy distance because we didn't want to blow it.
Yes.
You know, get it somehow wrong. And then all that happened was, fast forward 2 years, we eventually got a band to play our stuff, because what it was is me and Bob. Bob was covering vocals, drums, little bits of keyboards. I was doing guitar, keyboards, and drums, and bass. Sorry. And it was predominantly me writing the music, him writing the vocal melodies and singing them, but he also wrote a few songs of the music as well. So, and Bob was very much about the vibe. I mean, he very much set up the vibe of the band and stuff. So I sort of went along with that, you know, and he eventually we got the band ad nauseam off doing gigs. And the first gig we did, Tim came to it, and Dom got up and guested on the song. And again, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, I was still very in awe of him. At this point as well, we'd just been to see Bix's last gig, so I knew that they were going to sort of carry on, but they were looking for a guitarist. And so I rang up. I had Tim's girlfriend's number, then girlfriend Linda. So I phoned her up and said, "Look, is Tim about? Can I talk to him?" And she said, "Yeah." Handed me over, and I said, "Look, tell me to fuck off if you want to, but I wondered if you were auditioning for guitarist. I'd really like to come along and audition, but I don't know if that's all right or not." I was really apologetic.
Yes.
And he said, "Oh, no, we've been talking about that anyway, and it goes without saying, you don't have to audition. We know you can do it." But I said I would have to run it by the rest of the band first, though, because I need to check it with them. And unbeknownst to me, Linda had been nudging Tim during that first ad nauseam gig, saying, nick him, you got to get this guitar." And I had no idea. And so when he said, "You'll have to, I need to clear it with the others first," I had about 2 or 3 days where I didn't know if I was in or out, which were pretty long days.
Yes.
And then he rang up. And my mum said, "Oh, Tim's on the phone." I was like, "Oh, shit." So I went, "Hello," and he went, "Yeah, I talked to the others. They're not really into it. So yeah, sorry about that." I was like, "Oh no, that's all right. Well, thanks for thinking of me anyway, thinking of me even though I asked." And then he went, "No, only joking." Like that. He said, "You're in," like that, and I was like, "What?" And then he said, "Come and meet me in London." So we met in a place called the Spice of Life, this pub that ended up being the pub that we always went to before going to the Marquee on anyone's birthday. That was it, Spice, then Marquee.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that night we went to the Spice of Life, and then we went to the Syndrome, again, that club that the scene that celebrated itself, all the shoegazers used to go to, and where I'd been to their end of tour party in '89, and I couldn't believe it. And Tim, being what he's like, because he's such a beautiful soul, whenever he used to engage with anyone, he'd make them feel like the only person in the room. And so there I am, and he's giving me just making me feel really lovely, and just being, I think, because men and women would have a crush on him, for different reasons, and people would inevitably as well walk away almost talking like him, do it because they wanted to be him, and there was something very infectious about Tim, but he was a really lovely man.
Blimey, God! So you were in the band, and
Yeah.
was Bick doing levitation at that point?
Yeah, because I remember I walked in. I went to the studio when they were mixing Heaven Born and Ever Bright, which is the Cardiac's album of the time, which Bick played on, but which has a photograph of me on the front of, because they were trying to establish the new band. But it was a bit. I always felt it was a little bit sad for Bick, really, because he always wanted, or he had got this amazing job playing in Cardiac's, but he just got too busy with levitation to sort of do it anymore. But he did get to play on this album. But I think most people know that he played on it, although I've heard these ridiculous rumours that when it got remastered, people think that there's this rumours going around that I went in and replaced all of Bick's guitars and vocals. It's absolute bullshit.
Yes.
The only thing I did on that record, and I've said this in interviews before, was that there's a track called March, and it starts off with this sound effect that fades in. Now, this mix was an all-hands-on-deck mix before they weren't using automation or anything like that. So it was me, Tim, Jim, David Murder, I think. Was there anyone else there? No, I think it's just us. And we were all pushing up different faders. The only thing I did on that album was I pushed up the sound effect at the beginning of March. I goes, and that's what I did on that album. But I remember Bick walking in when we were there mixing, and I remember feeling a little bit like, shit, I mean, is he all right with this, and it was like, hey, when he saw me and stuff, like typical sort of Bick, loads of energy, something. And it was fine. And then we went out and toured together, and we had a load of fun. It was Cardiac's Levitation did this double bill thing, and it was really great. And then me, Tim, Bick, and Dave Francolini, the Levitation drummer, went out and did a version of Bick's old 80s band, Panic Sphere, which he'd done in the early 80s. And we went out and did a version of that band, which was predominantly, we did some Panic Sphere stuff, but it was predominantly covers. Like we did the Devo one, although I don't think we ended up doing it live. But we did stuff like XTC, Crosswires, and Clothes Hoist by what's he called? I can't remember his name. Industrial bloke. Bick loves him. I'm not a huge fan. I shouldn't say that.
What was the track called?
Clothes Hoist. Like the way you feel like your clothes can stick my head under your eyes. What's his name? I keep wanting to say Scarfish, but it's not. It's not Scarfish. It's Fetus.
Oh, Jay
Thirlwell. Jim Thirlwell.
Yes, Fetus.
Who apparently, I hear now, is a Cardiac's fan, which Tim would have loved. Because he loved Fetus.
God, yes, they were quite a lot to digest, weren't they?
Yeah.
Grape and Fetus.
Really big fan. The funny thing, I feel bad saying this because, bless Jim Thirlwell, he loves Cardiac's and seems like a nice bloke and everything. But he was big one night when we got a bit drunk with Joe Spratley, his wife, who from Spratley's, the band, Tim's old band. And then he went, oh, look, try and get into this and put it on. And me and Joe just hated it. It was just like, maybe it was just the wrong time to be listening to it, but we're like, take it off, this is horrible, It's like, and it all sounds like, and it was like, that's what it sounded like to me. And I couldn't cope with it at all. And I'd had this experience with it before. It just didn't make sense to me. And it still doesn't, you know. But the people that are into it love it. And there are going to be if there are any Cardiac fans listening to this interview, a lot of them will be fans of his, and they're going to think I'm an absolute arsehole for what I just said.
No. I mean, yes, you can't like everything, can you? So what was it like then, sort of joining the band and then sort of playing live and then going in the studio?
Well, it was really again took me a while to get over the being completely in awe of the band and Tim and Jim and Dom. You know, it really, really kind of like it took a time of settling in terms of that, but in terms musically and how we got going and the fun that we used to have, you know, it was that was pretty quick. But I was 21, I was a kid, and Tim turned 30 just after I joined, and I think Jim was 32.
Right. God, that's quite an age difference when you're that.
It really was. It was, and I would go along to rehearsals in Elephant Castle in London, and they would. I think they used to find it funny because I used to then leave them and go back on the bus, on the train to Milton Keynes, back to my mum and dad's house, and they started calling me Lonesome Joe.
Oh.
Or Jim did. Jim started calling me Lonesome Joe, and which is quite, it's quite funny. But I started in, you know, and I mean, I think at the time Tim did interviews where they said, where people would say, "Where did you find him?" And he would say, "Oh, he fell out of the sky one day. Found him in the mud." You know, sort of spinning the usual amount of yarns. You know?
Yes. So was it your first album? Was that Sing to God was the first album you were on?
Yeah, that was that was something because we that's right. We uprooted all of Tim's recording gear to Jim's house in the country, and we ended up. That's right. It became a real collaboration between me and Tim because what he would do is he'd play me what he'd done so far, which would be programmed drums, a little bit of organ, playing the chords and tune melodies. So yeah, the vocal melody played and some chords, and that'd be it. And he'd say, "Do what you want." I was like, "Really?" Because and now bear in mind he'd been very much in control of the arrangements in that band, but he seemed to, because of what I'd done before and demos and things I'd done, he seemed to just really trust me, and it was a lovely thing. And that's right, we'd recorded an EP to start with, which we did a track called Horse's Tail, which was one of mine. So he knew that I could write a bit and sort of I knew how to arrange things a little bit. So he just gave me free rein to do what I wanted. So I ended up doing all the a big portion of the guitars and a lot of the bass is on that album as well. You know, which must have been weird for Jim. You know, I don't know how he feel about that now. I feel a bit bad about it in hindsight, but it was just that we were working so fast and moving towards this goal that we weren't even thinking about anyone's feelings. I don't think it was so creative as well.
How long did that recording session sort of last?
Well, we did 3 songs at the beginning of the year, so it was not January '95. We recorded 3 tracks: Belly Eye, Horse's Tail, and a track called No Gold. Oh, and we recorded Angleworm the Angel at the same time. I don't know if we finished it. But anyway, 3 of those songs made it onto that EP. And then we went out and toured. There's an amazing tour with Sidi Boussaï, that band I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
We had so much fun. And then we came back off that tour we pretty much went straight into Jim's house in the country to record this stuff.
Amazing. And during that sort of period, this was the height-ish of Britpop. Were you picking up a bit more of a different audience at this stage, or a big audience?
Yeah. Can I go to the toilet?
Oh, God, yes. Do the toilet.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay, look. So, yes,
Sorry,
Sing to God.
You just mentioned Britpop, yeah?
Yes. Oh, that was it. Britpop, that's the one.
Yeah.
So, yes, your audience. So it's very different to the late 80s, isn't it, at this stage?
Yeah, but also another thing to factor in here is that we knew Blur. They were, I mean, Damon and to a lesser extent Graham, I think, were Cardiac's fans, and they would talk to Tim at the Syndrome Club that I mentioned earlier. But when they were on the verge of being dropped by Food Records around 92-ish. And so they record... what happened was, because Big was talking about this, Big bumped into him and Tim was there, that's right, because Levitation toured America in about 92. And they bumped into Graham and Damon, and they were both saying, "Oh, we fucking hate it here. This is shit. You know, we don't fit in with this American grunge scene and all this kind of stuff." They said, "We're going to go back to England. We're going to write the most British thing that we've ever written, and just go back to the old values of what we used to love when we were kids." And that's exactly what they did. They went back and did this monumentally brilliant album called Modern Life is Rubbish.
Yes.
Which is one of my favourite albums. I absolutely loved it. But I remember hearing some of the demos. Not demos. I remember hearing some of the tracks as they were being recorded along the way. But I remember when the album got released, Tim said to us all, "Everyone has to go out, look, everyone in the band, go and buy the Blur album. We've got to support Blur because the Food Records are talking about dropping them." And this is mental to think of at the time. So we all showed our support of Blur by going and buying their album. And I remember getting it home. I'd heard a few tracks already, but wow, I thought the songs were brilliant. It reminded me of... it brought back elements of things that I'd loved, because I quite like the jam and some of the moddy stuff, and the post-punk thing as well. So the Wire thing was good with me, and there was, but also it had elements of like Madness as well, and things like Sunday Sunday. And
yes, and the Kinks as well.
And Kinks, oh God, Kinks were huge for me. I'm always, I love the Kinks. And the Who as well, I love the Who. So did Tim, so does Bick, you know. But yeah, that was a huge album for us. And I remember when we went and recorded Barley Eye, which ended up on Sing to God. Definitely the guitar parts and the bass parts and the arrangement. In fact, I came up with the whole thing at the beginning where it starts off and sort of stops for a second and then goes on. That was all influenced by Blur's Modern Life album, you know. And then along comes Park Life, and I think I know it gets a bit of stick for being a pop album, but I love that album. I think it's amazing. And when we were recording... and then I subsequently got into Elastica because I like the whole cheeky ripping off thing, but they still had an undiluted sound of their own, which I really liked. But when me and Tim were in the middle of recording Sing to God, there was a moment where Matthew Cutts, who he had worked for the band, he was Sarah Smith's brother, and he had sent Tim a copy of Supergrass's first album, I Should Go. And me and Tim whacked it on, and straight away we were into it. And I was like, "Oh, look, there's a bit of Tommy there," because we're both really into Tommy and Sell Out by the Who, you know. And so, yeah, we were what I was definitely switched on out of the whole band, I was really switched on at the Britpop thing. And I know it became a bit of a dirty word, but I didn't care. You know, I like the music, and it brought back some spirit of the post-punk thing that I'd really, really enjoyed. You know, even elements of Adam and the Ants and Wire and all those bands. You know, it was great.
Yeah.
So and then we ended up. Yeah, that was the funny thing, because we ended up supporting. We supported them midway through recording "Sing to God" at Mile End Stadium. We went on, and it was hilarious because initially we went on to this huge roar of applause, and then halfway through one of the songs, Tim starts flicking the V's like that, but just doing his thing, and the audience didn't like it, and they started chucking coins at us and offering us out and all this kind of stuff. And it was like 15-year-old kids like looking at me. There's some kid was whacking his head as if to say, "Oi, you bald bastard," you know, like what. And it was I gotta say, it was like, what, it was about 35,000 people, 25,000, something like that. And I remember being a bit freaked out by it, you know, because it was a lot to sort of take on board.
Yeah.
But then backstage there was all the other bands like Menswear and Pulp, and I met Phil Daniels that day as well. You know, and it was a hero of mine because I love Mike Lee. I'm a huge Mike Lee fan.
So you watched Meantime, did you, during the?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was a huge Meantime fan, which is interesting because both. I think Damon and Graham used to skip off school and go and watch that as well.
Oh, it's a brilliant but depressing film, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah. But I love all his films for the feel they capture that. Just that. Oh God, that real melancholy era of working class life, you know, and it really strikes a chord with me. I'm propelled back there every time I watch it, and I love the fact that a lot of his stories go through this arc where it builds and builds and builds, and then it peaks, but then it just doesn't, and then it sort of tails off, doesn't really go anywhere.
Yes, suddenly the credits appear, and you think, God, I feel a bit depressed now.
Yeah, I love it. It's my favourite depression, you know? and also I love the fact that it's all based on a lot of improv as well.
Yes,
Mike Lee would when they did Nuts in May, which is another great film, he took a bunch of them to the pub up the road in the middle of nowhere and got them to just act being character, you know, around the locals, just to really get into it. And that's where a lot of the script would come from. You know, it's so the opposite of the way that I work on music, but I'm always very jealous of people that can rely that much on instinct when they're doing their art, and I love that.
Yeah,
it's something I wish I could do a bit more myself.
Yes, this is true. So then after that album comes out, what's it like to navigate into the next release, which is going to be, is this Guns, the next album that you work on?
Yeah, it starts to get a bit weird because halfway through, or about 2/3 of the way through, Sing to God, all the gear went back to Tim's studio, which was a shed at the bottom of his mum's garden, which is where we recorded the Belly Eye single. And he started to revert back to working on his own. So there's a handful of songs on that album that are almost like Tim Smith's solo songs. And he got back into that. So when we then went to record Guns, it was a bit more like that, you know. Although I was brought in initially, and we did a bunch of stuff, but there was quite a few things that didn't get finished or didn't end up on Guns. Like I had a track that I'd written called Silvery that we were doing live, but we just didn't finish the vocals, and I think it needed a guitar solo. And then another track called Shiprock, which we got as far as Sarah came and played some sax on it as well. But again, never got finished. And there were also other tracks, quite a few B-sides, and God, there was one track that I really loved, and it dates back to Sing to God, Faster Than Snakes with the Ball and the Chain, it was called.
Yes.
And it was, as soon as he played it to me when we were doing Sing to God, I loved it. And he was saying, no, the tune gets on my tits, and he didn't like it. So it got abandoned, and I never even got a chance to come up with ideas for it. So when we went to do Guns, I said, can we work on that track? I really think it's good, you know. And then when we did, it was one of those great working experiences. And I do really see Tim as a bit of a mentor to me. I learned so much stuff while I was there. And he got me doing all this great bass and guitar stuff. It was really fun. And and it came out so well. I thought, well, this is definitely going on the album, surely. And then one day he presented a cassette of the album to me, and it was had all these songs missing. It was like, oh wow. And to me, it seemed to be in a strange order, like the A side and the B side were the wrong way around. Although the introduction of the first song on the album was my suggestion. I said, we've got to start the album like that. He kept that. But then it just goes off into a kind of weird order. And I don't know what it is about it, but I feel disconnected from that album a little bit.
Yes.
I think there's some really lovely stuff on it, but Tim did go off eventually and just record a lot of stuff on his own. So it doesn't, although there's quite a few tracks that I was on, it doesn't seem to have captured that lovely kind of collaboration thing that we'd hit on with Sing to God.
Yes.
And I wasn't completely pleased with a couple of the mixes. One in particular, Cry Wet, Smile Dry. I think it's an awful sounding mix, and but Tim's attitude was he came with the cassette and said, "Can you just check the mixes to check they sound all right?" And then he said, when I said this doesn't sound right, this is all wrong, and he said, "Oh no, but it's meant to sound like that. Now come on, dig it." You know, it was just like, and then I suddenly realised you didn't really want my input on this at all. He just wanted me to say, yeah, it's all right, you know, it's good. So I don't know. It's my least favourite Cardiacs album out of everything that they did. My favourite is On Land and in the Sea, which was one that happened before I was around. And it always will be. I love that album. But Guns. I think there's some really good moments on it, and I think Tim come out with some amazing bits on it. I think he excelled himself, and he was recording it at the same time as he was recording Spratley's Jap, that album, Spratley's album, and again, really, I mean, that was a great album, and I think the combination of him and Joe Spratley was you know, it was really, really good. But in terms of a Cardiacs album, I don't know if Guns feels right to me. I want to like it more than I do. I really want to like it more than I do. And then some people love it, but other people don't. You know, and I feel bad. I feel like if I slag it off at all, then people get really offended because it's the equivalent of me slagging off Saint Tim's work, you know, and I'm not, you know, for me it's a vibe thing. It doesn't feel like as much a collaboration as the previous one did, but there are some lovely moments on it, and we did collaborate very well on quite a few tracks, 4 or 5 tracks or something on that album.
Yes,
but it's a strange one, Guns.
And how do you then navigate after that? What happens? Do you have a few more years before leaving the band at this stage?
Yeah, when was that? 99. So that,
Yes.
so we must have, I think we were recording it in 98. One of the weirdest years of my life. I got bulimic in 98. I remember
Oh,
that. I got
blimey.
really skinny. And I wasn't right. So I probably, again, another added factor to why I'm not that keen on the album, because I didn't have ever such a good time recording it.
How come you became a bulimic?
I don't know. Yeah, I do. No. No, now, I don't lay the blame at anyone's feet other than my own. It was my own stupidity. I went off the rails a little bit, and I suddenly realised that eating wasn't as good as drinking and snorting speed.
Right.
And I got myself into a real state, and to the point where I was so skinny that my arms and legs looked like they were going to snap, and people thought I was really ill.
Bloody hell.
And I thought I was fat. So I was making myself sick and all this kind of stuff. So I was in a really, really bad way in 99. Really bad. And then it turns to 99, and I met my wife, who I'm still with now, and we got a kid. 15. He turned 15 a couple of days ago. So everything came back together, and I piled the pounds back on.
My God.
Never been happier. No, it's great. And again, I emphasise what I said about Gail. I mean, she just knew it wasn't working, so she had to end it.
Yes, I think there was Mike Leigh. It was the Mike Leigh film. Is it Life is Sweet? There's the two girls, aren't there? The daughters. And one's
I'm the Jane Horrocks in this situation.
Oh
yeah,
God,
definitely.
yes.
Oh God. Oh no, it was horrible. It was a really dark time. I can't tell you. I was off the rails. I don't think I was a particularly nice person as well. So I don't think, actually, this is funny, it's like therapy. I don't actually think I'm equipped to speak about guns, because I wasn't in a good frame of mind when we did it.
Right.
I think and I'm very much a believer in when you record something, you hand it over to the audience. It's theirs, it's not yours anymore. So it's gone.
Yes.
So,
well, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
We all receive it differently, don't we? And yes, I mean, God, if you're going through that, obviously that's like an odd moment, isn't it? Odd chapter in your life.
But I was immature, and I dealt with it in a really stupid way. I just wasn't. I wasn't equipped to deal with it, because I think I was a slow grower, really. I mean, as I say, when I joined Cardiacs when I was 21, and Tim rings me up and says, "Can you come to London?" I'd never been on a tube on my own. I thought, well, how am I going to do that? It's just like I was really, really unworldly. I didn't know the ass from the elbow.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So then, a few years later, do you then leave the Cardiacs to do other musical projects?
Yeah, but that was a bit sad. I mean, it became difficult because poor Tim and Jim's mum got ill, and they had to look after her around the clock, sort of thing. Bless them, and it was really hard for them having to do that. Meanwhile, I needed to work, and we were doing one gig a year at the Astoria, and so I ended up getting closer to Ginger Wildheart, who's our Silver Ginger 5 album I played on, which Tim produced. So it's his fault.
Yes.
But I then joined the Wildhearts in 2003, I think it was, and it became apparent I was getting more and more busy. And Tim rang me up and surprised me by saying that they were talking about doing 3 gigs where they were going to play all the old stuff that they'd never recorded before. Now, all the time I'd been in the band as a fan early on, I'd have killed to have done that. I was always trying to get us to do like old stuff like that, and Tim wouldn't have a bar of it then. All of a sudden, he's completely changed. and gone down that route. And also, their poor mum had passed on by that point, so he had time as well. He had time to do stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't, and I knew that we were getting busy with the Wildhearts, so I had that conversation about doing that stuff, and then I stuck on Obvious Identity, the first cassette album, and put on I put on Visiting Hours, which I knew anyway. I played along with that when I was a fan, but there was another track that came on after it. I can't remember the name. And I started sitting there thinking, I can't be asked to learn this. Can't be bothered. And I thought, ooh, why do I feel like that? That's not good.
Yes.
And at that moment, I thought, well, if my heart isn't in it, then I don't really deserve to be in the band, apart from anything else. Coupled with the fact that I knew I was going to be busy, and it did turn out that Wildhearts ended up supporting Motorhead on tour at the same time as Cardiacs did these, what became now known as the famous garage concerts. And although I got back off tour in time to watch the last one, so I was in the audience for the last one, which is why there's a moment on one of the albums where me and Tim have a conversation. He's on stage and I'm in the audience.
Fantastic.
Which is funny, but no, it was sad because I didn't really want to leave because I love the band, and I certainly love Tim and Jim, and Bob and everyone. I know they're my brothers, but I knew that I didn't have the time to do it, and I didn't want to do it in a half-assed part-time sort of way anyway, So I mean, what happened after that? Well, I immediately said get Carvis in, because Carvis had guitar teched for the band in Crew, and I said just get Carvis in, he'll do it, and that's what they did, and I felt like when I left, personally, I think it's run its course. But that was only because of the way I felt about it. They continued to go on and do stuff, but for me, I felt it would end. My journey with it had ended, sort of thing. So it was right. It was right. I think I got out at the right time. I don't regret my decision to leave, but I will tell you that when we did a tour in 2007 where I had a comedy punk band called the Goddamn Whores that supported Cardiacs on their last tour, the last tour that Tim ever did in the band. And when Jim went to drop me off in the car, I just burst into tears and told him how much I missed playing in the band. And then I had a conversation with Bob saying that the one thing that I would do, I would come back for if this was ever to be a thing, would be to do to tour Sing to God, playing both discs with the heads as a backdrop, and I that was the one thing I always thought I would always love to do that. And then very shortly after that conversation, Tim had his thing where he got ill, and that was the bloody end of that, really.
Yeah, Christ Almighty, that is just not good, is it? No,
it was awful. I honestly, I found that whole thing very, very upsetting and hard to deal with, and I feel so guilty because I've made that about me. I've made that about how I perceived it, how I reacted to it, and I couldn't cope with it. It took me 10, 12 years to go and see Tim as he ended up, where his body had abandoned him and stuff. It was, but I'm so glad I did, and I have Bick and Joe to thank for that. Because they got me out playing with Spretly's Japs, just guesting, and I got to see Tim again, and we hooked back up, and it was just like, oh, there he is. Looked into his eyes, into his soul, sparkling eyes, and it was extremely moving. and I'm really, really, really glad I didn't leave it.
Yeah,
But I
nice.
thank them. I thank them for that. So
Oh,
yeah.
big, yes. So just slightly going back to your support in Motorhead, because I have to say I'm a huge Motorhead fan. What was that
You really?
experience? Yes, actually, I managed to interview dear old Fast Eddie just only about 6 months before he passed away, which was kind of
Yeah.
amazing. But yes, I adore Motorhead. What was it like that '04 period? Because obviously that wasn't their highlight of their career, as the beginning and also the end were good, but the middle.
Mickey D was in the band. So it's Mickey D and Phil. He's lovely bloke that he was. Phil from Wales, because I live in Penarth.
Oh, Phil
Well,
Campbell.
yeah, that's it. He was a lovely bloke. I liked him a lot. And Mickey seemed like nice enough character. Weirdly enough, me and Lemmy didn't get on that great. But I was a bit of a tearaway at the time, and Lemmy was just like absorbed by his cool world that I was spoiling by being around, sort of thing. And yeah, we just, I think we're just a bit allergic to each other, really.
Were you playing bass at that stage?
Yeah, that's mainly
Right.
what I do now. It's mainly
Yes, so you were on
really.
bass. You were looking at Lemmy's bass, thinking that's a nice bass. Better not ask him.
No, I don't care about instruments. They're just planks of wood, aren't they?
Were the gay bikers on acid around at that stage? Were they sort of part of that world? Because I remember, I think they supported
They're
Motor.
around much earlier. They're in the 80s, weren't they?
Yeah, 80s and 90s, I think.
Yeah.
I seem to remember they were touring with Motorhead at one stage, and
quite possibly, yeah.
possibly. So how long was that? Just a tour, a kind of a university tour that you did with the Wildhearts at that stage?
I think it was. I think it was. Yeah, in fact, it was. We supported them. And there was another band on the bill as well. Young Heart Attack were on the bill as well. The American band. They were nice people. I really liked them. They had this guitarist called Frenchie that he was hysterical. It was back when the Darkness was going. So Frankie Pallane had a moustache, and so did the bloke out of a Young Heart Attack. And at the time, a solitary moustache was the funniest thing in the world, which is just like, doesn't mean a thing.
No.
But at the time, it was really, really funny. And Frenchie had a moustache. That's what I remember. It's not the only thing I remember about him, but it was something I remember about him. But it's weird. You see, I always felt like I kind of infiltrated that world a little bit, because a lot of the people that follow the Wildhearts and that are they're quite metal,
Yes.
and I always was in deep fear of being found out for the charlatan that I really am, because I'm much more of a mod than a rocker, But,
yes, it would have been like Quadrophenia, wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah.
So, but with the Wildhearts, then you've been in it and out of it quite a lot, haven't you? You've been part of, but you're in it. You're in it for keeps now.
Well, who knows? Ginger's a mate, right? We met. I've known Ginger for the same amount of time I've known my wife, and bless him. I mean, he struggles. He has problems. He deals with mental illness. And it's not an easy thing to do. So in order to kind of remain in somebody's life who's bipolar, you have to kind of take on board some of the darker stuff as well as the nice stuff.
Blimey.
And I think as a friend, you sort of owe that to them if you're their friend. I think.
Yes.
And so I've always Tim loved him. I've always tried to support Ginge as much as I could. I think that whenever I feel, if ever there's ever been periods of time I haven't seen him, it's because I felt that me being in the equation was a bad thing. So I thought I'll take myself out of the equation for a while, let the dust settle, and then we'll hook up again. But I've never fallen out with him or burnt bridges with him. I've just thought, no, it's best to kind of back off for a little bit, you know. And so where we are at the moment, he's doing really well. He's really trying to get himself, you know, going and stuff again, and he's doing really great, you know. He battles demons on a daily basis, and that's not an easy thing for anyone to cope with. So,
no.
But one thing I will say is that my life as working with Ginger, which has involved the Wildhearts, is such a small part of it. The amount of strange solo things that we've done, and a band called Mutation, where Marky Smith did vocals on it, and you know, it's like he's anything but boring, you know, and he likes to chuck stuff together at the last minute sometimes, you know. So we'll work on stuff and make sure it's good, but you got to work quick before he gets bored, you know, which is great fun. I didn't realise that before when I went into it. I was so used to being in a situation where we'd work on things, you know, and
yes,
take time, and we wouldn't rock the boat too much. But he'll chuck a new song in at the last minute. Every time I've worked with him, we've done an album, he'll put all of a sudden it's like, I've written 3 new ones, so we're going to learn that and slap them down now, you know, as quick as possible. And it's like initially that was scary, but now it's kind of like, no, it's not anything to be scared of. Just embrace it and go with it. He's an intriguing bloke, really.
Oh God, yes,
really is. And this kind of misconception that he's somehow just that is bullshit. That bloke listens to so many different kinds of music, and it's got me into things. I mean, God. I remember one night. You remember Anthony and the Johnsons?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he got really moved by that stuff, and the two of us were sat there one night drinking whiskey, getting a bit tearful, listening to this bloke spill his heart out, you know, about his sexuality and stuff. And he's Ginger.
Oh God, there's that song. Is there somebody out there? Or
yeah,
and A Fistful of Love. God, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ginger isn't the person I think that a lot of people think he is.
No,
put it that way. And and it's the thing is, I'm currently jet lagged. But tomorrow I travel out to go and record some B-sides with the Wildhearts. So I'm singing tomorrow.
Right. So, but did you just do that project with the Cardiacs, the latest series of concerts then?
Yes.
So what was the idea with this and how did that come about?
Oh, that was just, it's been one of the most beautiful things, really. I had this moment, and it was early last year, where I put on one of the Cardiacs albums when I was a fan.
Yes.
And it was the first time I've been able to listen to it since Tim had his thing. So since 2008. It's the first time I've been able to listen to it and not get really, really upset. Or this is too much, I can't handle this, take this off, I don't want to face this, you know. It was the first time where I just thought, this stuff's amazing. I'm not listening to this. Oh God, I remember this bit. And I think Big said to me that he tried to listen to something and he found it scary because it sounded nothing like he remembered it sounding. But anyway, I had this great experience. As I was listening to it, I was like, oh my God, I really miss this. I really, really miss this. And I really want to do it again. But there's no way in a million years I would ever entertain the idea of going out without Tim playing this stuff, because it's Tim's thing. And I liked being his right-hand man, you know, and it's and still the way I see this song. Anyway, 2 days later, Bick and Joe ring me up, Bick and Joe Spratley, and they said, oh, we're putting together this gig it's a wake for Tim. It's like it's the celebration of his life that we couldn't do when the when lockdown was going on. So it's 2020 when he passed, and I was like, oh my God, that's how you can do this with integrity. And it's really weird that I was thinking about it a couple of days ago. But then it transpired that perhaps they were thinking about it exactly the same time. Anyway, it feels like a lot of kind of voodoo stuff going on here. But anyway, they said to me, could you come along, or would you be interested in coming along and doing this, being musical director and getting the band sorted? And I was just like, yeah, 100%, absolutely. I'm completely on board for this, because of then listed all of what had happened that I just explained to you.
Yes.
And it seems so odd that it sort of all fell together at the same time. Anyway, they said, we're going to try and get Jim to do it. And I was thinking, well, good luck with that, because I think it'd been of course, it's been so painful for that poor sod,
Yes.
He's like lost his brother, and they built that band up together, and the idea for him would have been awful to do it. So I didn't know whether he would say yes. Anyway, Jim called me up, and it's like, God, and I hadn't talked to him for like so long. And it's like, how you doing, darling? And he said to me, how do you feel about it? So I just was, I don't know, I felt more coherent and eloquent than I'd felt in years. Well, I found it very easy to talk about it. Explained everything that I just explained to you. And he said, and I said, but seriously, Jim, I wouldn't have entertained the idea of doing this before. This seems sound. And he just, in typical Jim fashion, man of few words, but the words that he says, he went, yeah, I feel the same way, like that. And it was just like, so like, yeah, okay, let there be cardiacs. But we were also very, very, particularly Jim and myself to some extent as well, were very set on it not being viewed as cardiacs or alphabet.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't. It was, because that would be disrespectful to, like to Carvis and people that are involved in LSD, the album at the moment, and so it was very much like, no, we're going to go out and we're going to do this thing. So when we went and rehearsed it, it was just so weird because initially what I did was kind of figure out what me and Vic were going to do, because I had to change all of my guitar parts so that I could play Tim's parts, and also initially the lion's share of it was me singing it.
Yes.
So all of a sudden I'm rejoining a band with all these songs that are very familiar, but I have to put my fingers in different places. And it's very, quite a strange thing to do. So there's no muscle memory allowed. You have to just relearn everything. So I figured out first what I would do and what Vic would do, and I think I sent him a recording of what I felt his parts would be, and without being too much of a Hitler about it, but and also Bob Leith, we'd already arranged that he was going to come over and see me. We hadn't seen each other for quite some years, and he was going to come and visit me. And then I put it to him. I said, look, we're talking about doing this thing. Are you in? And he said, no, I've heard about this already. And he said, no, I'm not. He felt he was too old to do it, that he wouldn't have the energy to do it. It's crazy because, other than Vic, he's like, and Craig, percussionist and stuff. He's like this kind of real kind of svelte, like he's a thin bloke,
Yes.
looks quite well, but he was worried. He was really concerned that he wouldn't be able to do it. And so it was looking like he wasn't going to. And then I talked him into it because I can't remember how I did it. But it was one of those things a little bit like where someone says to you, well, maybe I could get up and do 2 songs or something. I said, you can do the whole thing if you want. You know, like, and in the end, he was like, all right, yeah, very clever. Okay, you talked me into it. So he came on. And honestly, it's been lovely having Bob doing it because when we were in the band, the version of the band that me and Bob were in, we used to use backing tracks for the keyboards.
Yes.
And various bits. And so he had this click going in his ear, going, and he had to play along with that. So he was never free. He never got to play. He never got to really play like Bob Leith plays. And this gave him the opportunity to do that. And he sounded so good. Honestly, these gigs that we've done, that is the best I've ever had Bob play. I thought he was amazing. He was really good. And so I'm really glad I got to talk him into it and that he agreed to do it. And also, when we got together, it was so beautiful because initially we got together just 5 of us. So it was me, Bick, Bob, Jim, who'd all been in Cardiacs, and a keyboard player, Adrian Rhodes, who is Spratley's keyboard player, who is a genius. He's just got this amazing setup, and he's very, very good with sound, and he's a very good player as well. So he was great. So we had that initial rehearsal, and we were like, "Shit, this is gonna happen. This feels like we can do it," you know. And it was really lovely because I was going over to Salisbury where we were rehearsing and staying with Bick and Joe. So we were getting to hook up again and hang out and listen to music together and get drunk and just have fun as well. It's a lot of fun. And we also got to reflect on this amazing, beautiful thing that we'd resurrected, and it appeared to be falling into place.
Yes.
And it was just so nice. And then further on with later rehearsals, along comes Craig Fortnum on percussion and extra bits of keys and stuff, and Chloe Harrington on sax as well. And it just added this whole element of class over the top of it. It's this sheen and sparkle. And we were like, wow, we actually sound like me and Bob Cardiac. So at one point I said to Bob, this is the band we always wanted to join. You know, it was lovely. It was really, and there's, you know, good old Jim's back again doing it again. And it's like, you know, no one ever thought he'd come back. So it was, the whole thing was, it was just perfect. It all came from a place of deep integrity and love. It was never done for any weird reason, like trying to suddenly bask in old former glories or any of that bullshit. And also, I was very, very worried about being seen as somebody that was trying to fill Tim's shoes, or even worse, do an impression of. And I thought, no, I need to approach this in a very different way to that. I was terrified before the first gig.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I thought I was going to get bottled off. You know, I really did. It was awful. But then when we went on, the amount of, and this is the other thing as well, the amount of love from the audience, and people coming up to me, friends I've known for years, grown men crying, you know, sort of, you know, saying, I never thought I'd feel this joy again. And it was beautiful. It was, and it was all done with the exact right amount of integrity and love as it could possibly be done. And it was never going to piss over the legacy of the band or do anything that would disrespect Tim at all. And that was the main thing. I remember coming off the first night and Jim was just sat there staring into space. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you all right?" And he just like looked, carried on looking at the distance, and then sort of shook his head saying, "Yeah, I think so." Because I don't think he ever saw himself going back to that place.
No, you never would you? Do you think
No.
that would be?
And also, think about what he's got invested in. It's his brother, his own flesh and blood, and how much all of that stuff meant and means, still continues to mean.
Yeah.
And he's really taken over the reins with the future of it as well. He was great. He got together like with some help from Jesse the intro tape, but he's become a bit of a mean hand with all things studio now. So they've been working on LSD, and he's really amongst it. He's doing great.
Fantastic. God. And did you find the audience, was it quite mixed? Or was it mostly people who knew them, or was it people who were curious who've discovered them quite recently?
No, this is the thing. I mean, it was lovely to see some old faces and some people that had been around when I used to go along to gigs when I was a fan. There's this girl, Val, that was always around Cardiacs in the early days, and she moved to America. She come back for it. I couldn't believe it. Actually, Val isn't a girl. Sorry, yeah. Not a girl anymore.
No.
Sorry, Val, if you hear that. But it was, oh God. And then there's all these kids, these young kids turning up, like 19.
Yes. It's
like
always...
people who I see on Facebook and stuff chatting amongst themselves, and I recognise some of the faces, and then I saw them it's lovely. It's really, really nice. That.
So do you think you'll do the project again?
I don't know. I really don't know, because the whole point of it was to be awake, and to honour Tim's music. I think there are possibly other plans afoot for future stuff, because there's an album to stick out and other people that played on that album, and so there's that to take on board. I would say never, because I would love to do it again, but only if it's agreeable and only if the time's right. I think we went out and did it with complete integrity and love, and I think it was a two-way thing between the band and the audience, because they were so much a huge part of it. Particularly when we put out the tickets for the second run of gigs we did, Brighton sold out in minutes. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or an hour maybe, something like that. And it was just like, wow, the love is there for this, and people, and it's been lovely to see people's reaction to it as well. I think the second round of them, I saw less tears. People knew what to expect, but I think initially no one knew, including the band really. No one knew what we'd tapped into really. But I'm so pleased I came back to do it, and I will always have that. And if it's the last time it ever happens, then great. But I'm open, whatever.
Yes, well, that's so. So you just been to America. What was that band? By the way, I get confused with your bands.
Oh, sorry, yeah. That's a band called Lifesigns. They're a progressive rock band,
right?
Led by a chap called Jon Young, who he's been around for years, and he's played with Asia and Scorpions and all these different people, and he was in a band. Well, no, he still is in Bonnie Tyler's backing band, and he's been doing that for years, since the 90s. Yeah, so I think my brother is the bass player in that band. He joined in 1990, I believe.
Right.
And they've known each other for years. Jon got together this little prog rock album under the name Lifesigns, and there was just three of them to start with. It was and a sounds man called Steve Risman, who's still in the band. But it was John Young, who plays keyboards and sings. Frosty Beadle, a drummer who was in the band's Cutting Crew.
Right.
I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight. He played on that. And Nick Beggs, you remember him out?
Oh, yes, Kajagoogoo.
That's it, yeah. Now, what happened was they got this together and thought they would do it live. And it turned out Nick Beggs is very busy. I think he was playing with either Stephen Wilson or Steve Hackett, but possibly both at the time.
Yes.
He didn't have time to do it. So my brother got in touch with me and said, John Young has just this guy John Young, who you've never met before, but I've known for a while. He's got this prog rock band together. He asked me to play bass, and my brother said, I hate prog rock, so I don't want to do it. You know, but I suggested to him that you might want to do it if you like a bit of that stuff. And you know, I'm pretty choosy about me prog. I'm not a connoisseur really. I like some of it, but anyway, I thought okay, so I went along for an audition and stuff, and it was funny. I had to learn Nick Beggs' bass lines, which was funny because when I was 14 years old, I used to learn Kajagoogoo bass lines.
Excellent.
Because I was really taken by Nick.
Yeah.
Again, it was similar to the Japan thing where there was a bass player that was the thing that hooked me in initially. And so I thought, oh yeah, money for old rope. Learning Nick Beggs' bass lines again, but this time for a job, you know. And I went for the audition, and they wanted me. The drummer said what he liked about my playing was that I was apparently fearless, just like dug in, you know. And I think I've got JJ Bunnell to thank for that, really.
Yes.
That's certainly not Chris Squire. He's a much lighter player, but no.
So is that quite a big outfit in America, by the way, Lifesigns?
Well, we went out and did a thing called Cruise to the Edge.
Oh, God, yes.
One of those cruises, yeah?
Yes, I've seen them.
Well, you get the prog rock bands, the Meridians, the Steve Hackett's, the Yeses. They're all there playing this thing, and we went on it not long after I joined, and people liked what we were doing, so we picked up fans along the way. I think John Young, the main guy who writes the stuff, he said we're very famous on a boat, you know, which is the way it's gone. But yeah, it's been nice. We went over to America. We got to play a few gigs recently, you know, and we've slowly been building up a following in the UK and elsewhere. And you know, John describes us as fiercely independent, which is funny. You know, here we are playing prog rock, but with all the ethics of a punk rock band in the old days, really.
Yes, God,
we're like the Crass of prog rock. We're really not.
Yes, well, I think there was a prog festival in Great Yarmouth last weekend or 2 weekends ago and they've got next year's headliner, which is going to be Asia and various other people.
Oh, right, okay. I've got a feeling that we were meant to play that. I can't remember what happened. Yeah, Asia, that's funny. The guitarist, John Mitchell, is a friend of mine. He was playing with It Bites for a while. He replaced the singer guitarist.
Yes.
but yeah, I think he's playing guitar with Asia at the moment. But yeah, yeah, all that stuff. It's funny though, being in that world. It's hilarious. It's you get. It's been lovely. We've got lovely fans and people that are very, very kind of passionate about what we do. And, but you get a few nutters. It's people that are just really, really like prog rock should be this way. And giving it rules, and it's like, what's progressive about that? This is regressive rock. It led to me putting a sign on a bass that said "Destroy all genres," because I thought it became neither here nor there. Whether we were prog rock, whether we were men or women or gay or straight or white or black or anything, this kind of destroy all genres thing is really like destroy all categories and or brackets or any of that stuff. It's I think people are too kind of hung up on that. On constantly trying to put I don't know. Well, you know what I mean.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's well, I think when we were younger and music was a bit more tribal, I could understand it, but now,
yeah, but
I kind of think, I always think, don't knock young people. We were all sort of arting around, struggling when we were young, and it wasn't that great. But, so I don't knock what young people are going through, because I think, God, I was completely lost. But kind of as I got older, because I, as I mentioned, I did like prog, and then you felt a bit embarrassed, and now you think, I don't really care anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I really, I'll put on, like you mentioned Bonnie Tyler. I think, I'll just enjoy it for what it is. I'll put on anything for what it is that if I like it, and then I'll get bored and I'll put on something else. But I'm not that hung up, and I can't imagine being with somebody. I have met some people my age who are a bit tedious, because they're like, music was great in our day, but music now isn't good, and it's like, oh fucking hell, I can't cope with this.
It's a nostalgia. I honestly, now this is something that I'm struggling. Can we pause again?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll be back.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, so nostalgia. It's tricky, isn't it?
Bitter nostalgia. You know what I mean? That's what we're just talking about, right? So
yes.
It's that thing. And do you know where I see it the most? It's on social media, Facebook. You get suggested all these different groups, and a lot of them some of them about 70s comedy, some of them about there's one that I'm actually a member of, and I don't drive or anything, but it's British Road Scene 1955 to 1995. Do you know this one?
No. British, what's it called?
British Road Scene.
Oh.
Now it's gone from me looking at it because I really like seeing old cars like Capris and Zephyrs and Cortinas and stuff like that, and seeing the what roads look like back then, to me just laughing hysterically at the comment sections.
Yes, we all do.
Well, it becomes about okay, your average comment will be not a pair of ripped jeans or a mobile phone in sight, sent from a smartphone. It's just ridiculous, and it inevitably descends into some a racist connotation, or a gender, a racist.
Yes.
Or sexist, or it was better back then, and it becomes like, hang about,
political correctness gone mad, or it's woke, and
and it's all daft, It's there's something in the middle, but I cannot be doing with bitter nostalgia. Yes, there were things about the past I absolutely loved. Like you mentioned the tribal situation with stuff you listened to. In a way, it was almost better when we had less choice. There's something to be said for that.
Yes.
But at the same time, we've got access to so much stuff now that I'm hearing. Certainly, I mean, I remember when I joined Cardiacs, or when I first got to know Cardiacs, they were like, "Oh God, when they heard Ad Nauseam, it's like there's another one of us about," which seems ridiculous now, because if I had heard half the stuff that's around now back then, I'd have been like, "God, somebody else is doing it, or they're doing it," or so that there is, for all of the faults of modern life, and there's a lot of faults, particularly politically. There is this choice of so much great stuff to go and check out, that wasn't around in the late 80s.
No, absolutely. And I think, I mean, it was nice. It was quite comfortable or easy when there was like gatekeepers. But if you, like I met a lot of people who went, well, Jon Poole didn't like us, the NME didn't like us, we didn't get much. So our career kind of got whacked before it even could start, because there was no other place to go. And we weren't going to get played on daytime radio. So it was like, that was a bit disappointing, really, wasn't it?
No, you're right. I mean, I remember that for years, Jon Poole wouldn't touch Cardiacs. But I've since been informed that it wasn't him; it was John Walters, his producer. Now, I never resented Jon Poole, because I just thank him for everything he gave us.
Yes.
Like the amount of bands that I am a fan of because he played them on his show. How could you ever be resentful towards him? But. And also later down the line, I think he did a session for Sea Nymphs, one of Tim's bands, who I think Organ sorted out. They're a fanzine stroke record company, still are, and I think they were working with Sea Nymphs at the time, and I think somehow it all got on Jon Poole, and he played the stuff. They did the session, and as far as I know, I think he played something off Guns.
Yeah,
because I'd heard a rumor before that the reason that he didn't like Cardiacs was because he'd seen a photograph similar to the one that I saw when I first saw them, and thought that they were taking making fun of mental illness.
Right.
And that's the story that was going around. But I now doubt that even was a thing. I don't know.
I think, well, I suppose just going back to that nostalgia thing, I think it just, and this is why I'm dreading being in a care home, that I'm not that good at sort of going back and reminiscing, because it's like, actually, when we were, if you remember going back to those times, we didn't wake up every morning, going, wow, this is fantastic, another day, aren't we all excited? I can remember sitting around, just a lot of people moaning and criticising and saying, God, everything's shit. And so it's like, yes. So it was like, yes, now we look back and we think, God, yeah, actually that was quite comfortable. We did have the doll, we did have sort of student grants, but we didn't appreciate any of it. We did have the Norwich Arts Centre that you could go and see bands for like £2. But again, we didn't sort of go, I feel really grateful. It was just like we were just a bit moany, really. But
I would have been pissing and moaning about Thatcher at the time. It's just like, oh God, I don't know. It was, you never. Oh my God, is it just as simple as the grass is always greener somewhere, and other cliches? It really. I mean, honestly, people are just fucking idiots. Basically, they don't know what they've got, but then they never bloody did.
No, this is true.
That was never the case. It's not like there was a perfect time. I mean, the whole punk thing came out of people being displeased with what was going on, but yet somehow that's been metamorphosized into this like glorious era of romance and passion and fun, and it just wasn't that. It was miserable.
Yes,
It was.
the mid-70s was pretty. I was only 10, but I could tell it wasn't great. So look, going ahead to 2025, halfway through the decade, what's on your calendar and on your to-do list?
For the rest of this year.
Well, this year and then going into next year.
Yeah, I've okay. So I think we're Lifesigns have got 3 more gigs coming up in November, where we will be getting back together with our previous drummer. Well, I say previous, our drummer Zoltan Church, that was unable to play on recent gigs, and I'm going tomorrow. I'm going to record some B-sides for a new Wildhearts album with a new line-up.
Yeah,
which is quite exciting. We're doing some gigs at the end of the year, and we do some Scandinavian and European gigs at the end of this year, and then in March next year we're doing some UK stuff. I'm out again with Lifesigns. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, I'm in the process of trying to re-record some old Cardiacs demos I did. I haven't told anyone about this yet. But some of the songs, like Silver and Shiprock, I will do the definitive versions of now. But there's other songs that I submitted to the band that, for whatever reason, didn't get used, that I'm going to finish off and do. And I've written enough songs to turn it into an album. So it'll be very much Cardiacs sounding, I guess.
Yes.
In that respect. But it'll be me doing it, my sort of take on that.
Yes.
Which was always different to Tim's, as was William D. Drake's take on it, different to Tim's.
And what's Bick up to now? Is he still?
Bick?
Yes.
Well, Bick and Joe Spratley are in the process of getting a record label together called ATE, and it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be a real scene of like-minded individuals getting together, putting albums out. There'll be some cross-pollination of people playing on each other's albums, possibly. You see, this is all really new.
Yes.
And I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn by even talking about it.
Might, yes, okay.
But they, they've got a lot of get up and go, those two, and they really want to get things going. And there's a Panic Sphere album that myself, Bob, and Bick have recorded together. Possibly talk of doing a second one as well, but we haven't really gone further than kind of talking about that. But we're in the process of mixing and finishing off, and still doing like overdubs for the Panic Sphere album, because we got together just before lockdown in 2019. The 3 of us got together and did a gig. We learned all this crazy stuff, and we thought, well, we should probably get it recorded and documented, and
yes.
And so that's still in the process of being made at the moment, and it's really fun. It's really good fun.
Oh, this is fantastic. Well, look, God, I'm going to have to go to bed soon, John.
Yeah, me too. My wife has just come in, so...
Yes, I just realised it's getting quite late. But look, thank you ever so much. It's been amazing, your story, actually. Quite boggling.
Oh, thank you. You know what? I've really enjoyed it. It's been lovely kind of chatting about music as well. Both of a similar age, slightly older than me, but...
yes.
But yeah, we have a lot of the same reference points, and to talk about this stuff has been lovely.
Yeah, it's been great to hear about your musical journey. It's quite stunning. So yes, well, look, good luck for the next period, and yes, I'll hopefully speak to Bick again one day when he's got another project on. be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's lots coming up.
Yeah. But look, thank you. I better hit the bed actually soon, otherwise I won't. But look, thank you for your time, and I'll keep in touch. Is that all right?
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it. You know,
Yeah,
it's been a lovely talk. You know?
Yes.
And I don't take this stuff for granted. So thank you.
No, well, thank you. And look, good night. And God bless us. Oh, I think it was Dave Allen, wasn't it? Okay, take care. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, David. Night.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That is the end of the interview. That's a massive thank you to Jon for giving me the time for that. This has been the C86 Show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on any of the social media platform sites. Just do C86 Show. All these have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.